Good day and welcome to Predators Proclivity, where we look at data from this season for the NHL Nashville Predators and make comments upon it. I'm your host, Preston Proctor. So if you haven't really been following the news, the NHL news anyway, Colorado, you may remember, last week made a trade of backup goaltenders. We sent West Wedgwood to Colorado for Annunen. And Wedgwood, who has played quite a bit since then, 3 out of 4 games. And I guess because yesterday Colorado traded their starting goaltenders, did a trade of starting goaltenders with San Jose. So last week they traded their backup goaltenders. This week they're trading their starting goaltenders. Colorado is 4th in the Central Division with 32 points, 8 points behind Minnesota. Winnipeg currently would be the second wildcard team. So even though they are having a decent season, they apparently think they need to change some things. And they're in a playoff position. Anyhow, more on the Preds later. But yeah, a little side note. Colorado traded goaltenders. It's a big thing yesterday. There was an article on the NHL.com website talking about Utah developing their permanent brand identity. That was kind of interesting. And apparently that takes 18 months to do, and explains a little bit why they don't have much yet, given that they had five months to get ready for this season, which I guess included getting a practice facility and updating the arena. And so 17 months before next season, when they are expected to have their permanent brand identity determined. We'll see how that goes. Anyway, there's just a little two side notes, news in the NHL that I thought were interesting. A little bit of insight into how teams get their identity, whatever you want to call it, brand. Though Vegas seemed to take a little too long. Seattle, I thought, did a pretty good job, but Utah, kind of an interesting test case given how quickly that all came about. Anyhow. So this is not random NHL news podcast. This is Predators Proclivity, and the Predators have a game tonight. The Predators return home for one night and one night only. I guess they didn't get enough of playing Canadian teams on the last road trip, so they're bringing one down. That's right, we are bringing a Canadian hockey team down to Nashville. Tonight, the Calgary Flames will be in town, and I'm assuming the Predators will be too. It's hard to tell. Hard to tell whether they're showing up or not. Calgary is 5th in the Pacific Division with 31 points. They are 1 point behind both Vancouver and Edmonton. I just can't get enough about mentioning Canadian hockey teams. But yeah, Calgary is 1 point behind Vancouver and Edmonton. 5th, 1 point behind. That's exactly the same situation Calgary was in when we played them the last time, which is really kind of funny. I think the same circumstance with Colorado. The second time we played Colorado, they were in exactly the same place. But Calgary is 13-10-5 overall. That's a winning record, people. That's what that sounds like. On the road, not so much. 3-7-4. 3-7-4 on the road. Winning record overall, but most of their losses have come on the road. So good news for us. Against the Central Division, they are 3-3-1, which is 500 ball. They are 4-6 in their last 10. Prior to the last 3 games, though, they in the 8 games before that, they had a 4-game winning streak followed by a 4-game losing streak. The winning streak started with a 2-0 win versus Nashville. They have lost their last 2 games. They are on a 2-game road trip, so they lost the first game of the road trip. And then after the game here in Nashville, they go home for 5. Personnel changes. Center Justin Kirkland was placed on injured reserve. He had ACL surgery and is out for the year. He had 6 assists. That was the notable thing I saw from him, I think in 11 games. So didn't play a lot, didn't contribute a lot. So not a, probably, as far as stats go, not a big loss. Left wing Ryan Lomberg, also out. His main stat was 22 penalty minutes, which was 5th on the team. So, again, those 2 players not expected to be a big loss for Calgary. And then as far as people on the team that are not injured, right wing Adam Lapka was returned to the Calgary Wranglers. Only brought that up because I like to mention the AHL teams because I think the nicknames are funny. And left wing Walter Duell and right wing Jakob Pelletier were recalled from the Wranglers. So a couple of wingers brought up, and because a center and a winger are on injured reserve. Now, all that being said, who should we be looking out for? Top of my list is number 10. Number 10, center Jonathan Huberdeau. He leads the team in goals with 9. He's tied for the point lead with 17. And he's got the second worst plus minus at -9. So stuff happens when he's on the ice. The other person to watch out for is number 91, center Nazem Kadri. He's second in goals with 8, tied for the point lead at 17, has the worst plus minus at -15. He's also second in penalty minutes with 26 and first with shots with 90. So sounds like he's the most active player with shots both with the puck and his fists. I don't know that he would a lot of fighting penalties, but anyway, so that was the quickest little jab I could get in there. Didn't really fall, I guess. But anyway, yeah. So worst plus minus at -15, most points, second most penalty minutes, and the most shots. So probably the most. That's number 91, Nazem Kadri, center Nazem Kadri, and then. The other person, number 52, defenseman Mackenzie Weegar. He leads the team in assists with 12. He's got the second most points at 16, so third on the team, but second most points at 16, with the second most time on ice at 23:33. So those are your 3 players to watch, number 10, 91, and 52. For the Preds, it's, okay, the Preds. So what I started doing was saying, okay, is it time to start getting nervous? We're a third of the way into the season. Chicago won last night, so the Preds are now back in the basement of the league. They're 7-15-6. They're 5-6-2 at home. They're 8th in the Central Division, tied with Chicago at 20 points, but Chicago has 2 more wins, so they break the tie that way. So the Preds have 20 points. We're a third of the way into the season. 93 points would have been a wild card last season. Vegas got in with 98. The Preds got in with 99. But the next team had 92. So 93 would have been a wild card spot. So looking at 93 points, how do we get to 93 points? And as I said earlier, as far as this season goes, Colorado's currently in the second wild card spot at 32 points, which is just 12 points ahead of the Preds. But it's still 12 points. And you can't, 12 overtime losses takes a lot of games. So the Preds with 20 points are, let's say, 73 points behind a play. 73 points, need an additional 73 points to get to a playoff spot. That's 36 and a half wins. And there's 54 games left. The 54 games left, 36 wins, so that gives you a buffer of 18. That's not a lot. That's not a lot. We're starting to do the math. The Preds could potentially be eliminated from a playoff spot in early January if they don't get better. So March 7th is the trade deadline. And then after that, the Predators have 20 games. So with 54 games left, counting tonight, they've got 34 games between now and the trade deadline to look like a team that can make the playoffs or has a future. It seems a little weird to be talking about that at this point in time, but I think that's the reality of the situation. Is you've got to start taking a look at understanding where you're at in the season. And the Preds are, since they're last in the season, they're going to run into this first. What is their what's the future? What's the future for this season? And that's just the reality of the situation. We're a third of the way in. We've got 34 games between now and the trade deadline. So what needs to happen? Well, obviously the Preds have to win. The Preds need to go on a winning streak. They need to go on a significant winning streak, or at least start winning, 80, 90% of the games. So, 8-2 in a 10-game stretch, that kind of thing. So they can't. It's not that they can't lose a game here and there, but 34 games to the trade deadline. It's funny. I mean, kind of bringing this up is also the San Jose news, where they're getting rid of, or trading goaltenders, and they're making moves. And that's why I thought, well, gee whiz, have they given up? And they traded backup goaltenders with us, which I don't know. Wedgwood has won. He's played 3 games with them. He's 2-1 with Colorado now. San Jose is in the bottom of the Pacific. They've got 25 points, played 30 games, so 2 more games than the Preds. But, they've been bouncing around the bottom as well. Lost their last 2. Yeah, I mean, you could maybe think that this trade for Colorado was instigated by San Jose, but you have to remember that they just traded backup goaltenders last week. So it really looks like Colorado is the team that is instigating things, and then you have to start thinking, why, and to what end. But obviously they're in playoff position. They're not giving up at this point in time. It's not time for the Preds to give up either, but it could be shortly. The Preds are let's see. They're 5-7-3 against the Western Conference. They're 1-6-1 against the Pacific Division. Tonight is the 29th game of the year. Last season, the Preds were the number one wild card team. And in 29 games, they were 16-13. And like I said, they're 7-15-6 to this point. Yeah, I guess the interesting question is, how many more games? If the Preds keep playing the way they are, which is not great. What are they? They've lost the last 8. 1, 2, 3, 6, 7. They lost the last 7. They've never. They lost 5 in a row to start the season, then they won 3, and they haven't had 2 wins back-to-back since. Well, I mean, yeah, they've only won 7 games, so you win 3, and then they just get a smattering of wins here and there and a bunch of losses. So they're 2-8 in their last 10. That, what at what point do you pull the plug on the season? I think that's the interesting question. And then you start looking at, who are your, who's your biggest cap hits. And I think we know who those are. And then who are you going to lose in free agency at the end of the year, right? So the thing that would make the most sense is to start looking at your unrestricted free agents and seeing what you can get for them and draft picks or whatever. I don't know, but I think definitely. Let's see how many games between now and the end of the year. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 games. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 games between now and the end of the year. I think by the end of the year, we'll know something. The record of the Preds in the next 10 games, I think, will do a lot to say what's going to happen. But who are they playing in the next 10 games? Well, they got Calgary tonight. They got Dallas, Colorado, the Rangers, Pittsburgh, L.A., Carolina, St. Louis, Winnipeg, and Minnesota. So of those teams, a lot or most of those are in playoff positions. You've got the Kings are second in the Pacific, Dallas, Minnesota, Winnipeg, Dallas, and Colorado. So those are the 4 teams. Those are the top 4 teams in the Central Division. They're playing all 4 of those over the next 10 games. Dallas Cowboys. Winnipeg, Calgary, Vancouver, Minnesota. Vancouver is 3rd in the Pacific. Pittsburgh is 7th in the Metropolitan, so no great shakes there. The Rangers are 4th in the Metropolitan. So it's going to be a tough next 10 games. Whoa, excuse me. And I think in the next 10 games, definitely by the end of the next 10 games, decisions are going to start being made. Because at that point, after the next 10 games, where's my notes here? There'll be 44 games left. We'll be right at midpoint of the season, close to midpoint of the season. And, the trade deadline's still in March, but I think it's just, I think in the next 10 games is where we're going to see either the team wins. I'd say they probably do have to win 8 of the next 10, or it's starting to look to see what trades can start to be made, and start prepping for next year. I think is what where they'll be. So I hate to spend too much time on that, but I just start looking at that. At some point, you've got to that's the data that you've got to look at, and what's the potential for this season. And so expected a lot more out of the Preds. Still expect a lot more out of the Preds, but there you go. Okay, so moving on. So this is the 29th game of the year. They were 16-13 at this point last year. On 14 road games, which took 23 games last year, they were 8-6 in 14 home games. And they were 11-12 after 23 games last year. So they're 11-12 overall and 8-6 at home. So again, tonight is the only home game after a 4-game road trip, and then they go back on the road for 2 more, Dallas on Thursday, Colorado on Saturday, and then they come back home for 4. Personnel changes. Defenseman number 3, Jeremy Lauzon is out, not shown on the site as being out, but was listed as out, and I think out for the season. That and number 90 center Ryan O'Reilly has been out for a few games, but again, not listed as on IR. I guess just considered day-to-day. And hasn't been playing. The announcers seem to think it sounds like his biggest contribution is winning faceoffs, but winning faceoffs is nice, but it doesn't win the games for you. No new transactions, nobody called up, nobody sent down, that kind of stuff. The people to watch: number 9 left wing Philip Forsberg, number 59 defenseman Roman Josi. They lead the team in everything. Forsberg leads the team in goals with 9, shots with 98. Josi leads the team in assists with 16, points with 23. He's second in shots with 86, and he leads time on ice 25-40. The Preds are 5-6-2 at home. They lost their last home game 2-3 in overtime versus Tampa Bay. They lost the last 2 home games 2-3 in overtime. So hopefully that trend will not continue. In the game versus Tampa Bay, in the first period, the Preds scored at 123. That was the only scoring in the first. In the second period, Tampa Bay got 2. One was shorthanded, and then Josi got a goal to tie the game. He also got the goal in the first period, so that was his second. And the third period had no scoring, and then Tampa Bay scored about a minute in overtime on a power play. So they got 2 of the 3 goals were special teams goals. The Preds got the first goal. They won 1 period, tied 1 period, and lost 2. So the first goal is not really an indicator. Overall, when the Preds get the first goal, they're 4-5-4. When they don't, they're 3-10-1. But hey, look, they've only won 7 games and lost. Okay, they were overtime losses, but hey, scrolling up here, 21. They've won 7 and lost 21. So nothing. It's hard to say that anything that they are doing, and I've said this before, hard to say that anything that they are doing indicates that they're going to win. Everything they're doing indicates they're going to lose. Or, when you're 7-21, you're winning 25% of your games overall. Oh boy. Okay. So anyway, any interesting stats here? Winning 1 period. Last year, that wasn't a very good overall. Last year, if they won 1 period, they were 13-16. At home, 6-8, away 7-8. This year, 1-6 overall. When they tie one period, last year wasn't that bad, especially on the road. If they tied one period overall, last year they were 23-17. So winning record, that's what that sounds like. At home, 12-11, so close to 500. And on the road, 11-6. So there you go. Losing two periods. Last year they were 1-23. They did have the one game against Pittsburgh where they went to overtime and won the game. Ergo, they lost two periods, but won two periods, and that's happened twice this year in the two overtime losses. Why is that not in the numbers? Anyhow, and I think in back-to-back games even. So there's that. Winning by period. There's 7-6-11 in the first, 7-13-4 in the second, 9-10-5 in the third. So the second period is where they're struggling. At home, they have a winning record, 5-3-5 in the first, 4-7-2 in the second, 6-6-1 in the third, 1-2 in overtime. End result correlation. So what I did with the time I had was I said, okay, so the Preds, their overall record, their record in the second period is 7-13-4. Okay, 7-13-4. Their overall record is 7-15-6. So it's close, right? So I wanted to say, okay, what's the correlation between winning, losing the period, and winning and losing the game? So in the second period, when they've won the second period, they've won the game 5 times and lost it twice. And when they've lost the second period, they've won the game twice and lost 12 times. And the third period, they're 0-7. So not the third period, but when they tie the second period, they're 0-7. When they lose the second period, they're 2-12. Obviously, there's a huge correlation between not winning the second period and not winning the game. The first period, if they win the first period, they're 3-5. So winning the game. So when they win the first period, it's not an indicator, too much of an indicator. When they lose the first period, they're 1-6, and when they tie it, they're 3-10. The third period, 6-3 when they win it, 0-12 when they lose it, and 1-6 when they tie it. They win the second, win the third, they're 4-0. So it just you start looking for the zeros. 2-12 when they lose the second period, 0-12 when they lose the third. You could kind of make a little bit of a case that the second and third periods look really similar. 5-2, 6-3 when they win the third period. Second period, 5-2. So, yeah, I've always maintained the biggest problem for the Preds is the second period. It's still the case. They're being outscored 19-30 in the second period. At home, 9-14. So that's kind of the that's those numbers skipping. Something. Where is that? I started looking at NHL Edge. I guess that's going to be down in the matchup. So, so let's move on to talk about tonight's matchup. Because I started looking at NHL Edge, NHL.com/edge, and to see what information was there and what sort of comparison. It's kind of interesting. I picked the Washington Capitals to compare to try to get another sense of about what the Preds could be doing better. As far as tonight's matchup, tonight is the second game of 3 against the Flames. They'll play once more in Calgary in early January. Calgary did win the last game 0-2. All the games were in the third, and there was one empty net. Last year, the Preds lost the one away game and won the first game in Nashville in November 4-2, and then lost to Nashville in January. So hopefully they'll repeat the first game win in Nashville tonight. Games against Calgary last year. The Preds scored 2 goals in the first period in all 3 games. They didn't do that in the first game, obviously, so that kind of trend is not being upheld. Comparison between the two teams. First period scoring. Goals for Calgary is last, and goals for last in the league. Nashville's 27th, so not much better. Calgary's got 14 goals in the first period to Nashville's 19. Goals against, Calgary's tied at 11th with 26. Nashville is 25th at 19. So the differential for Nashville in the first period is 0 and negative 12 for Calgary. Not that winning the first period or getting the first goal has really helped the Preds this season, but it's always nice to have a lead. In the second period, goals for both Calgary and Nashville are next to last at 19. 19 comes up a lot. Goals against, Calgary is 24th with 23, and Nashville is 9th with 32. So 9 there. I guess the Preds have minus 13 goal differential, and Calgary's 4. So Calgary definitely shows up a little better in the second period than the Preds. The third period scoring, goals for, Calgary is tied for 5th with 36. Nashville's 30th for 22. Goals against, Calgary's tied for 15th at 30th, and Nashville is 14th with 31. So the goals against in the third period looks very similar, but Calgary is able to pull out more goals. They have a goal differential of plus 6 to the Preds minus 9. I guess the story of this saga is if that goes, the Preds have to be able to score enough in the first to make up for what they're going to give up in the third. So overall goals for, Calgary's 28th with 71. Nashville is tied for last with 61. And goals against, Calgary is 17th with 83, and Nashville is 8th with 88. So the goal differential 27 for the Preds versus 12 for Calgary. Other things. Calgary is the 4th best team scoring on 5-on-5 with 43. So they've scored 71 goals, 43 of them 5-on-5. Nashville is 11th highest with 57. 57. Oh, boy. That's 5-on-5. So Calgary's pretty good there. Nashville gives up the most goals, the second most goals on 6-on-5 with 10. Calgary's tied for 20th with 4, so it's not a huge differential there, but Nashville is giving up more goals, almost more goals than everybody, 6-on-5. And I guess that kind of makes sense. A lot of empty net goals, right? And the Calgary, 5th highest goals against, 4-on-5 with 20. So it sounds like the best opportunity is on the power play. The penalty kill. Calgary's given up 20 goals on the penalty kill. Nashville is best in the league with only giving up 7 in 4-on-5 situations. Calgary is 8th in penalty minutes with 272, and Nashville is 9th with 263. Looking at all of these numbers individually, like the penalty minutes and goals against or whatnot, none of these things are in particular the thing that says that they're going to lose or that they're playing poorly. Because there are other teams that have more penalty minutes that are in top of the league, and there are there are teams that have worse numbers in these categories than the Preds and have much better records. So you can't just look at one stat and say, this is why the Predators are losing. If you want to look at anything, and that's why I started looking at NHL Edge, so I looked at Calgary, and the stats between Calgary and the Preds, they look very similar in all the different categories. So I said, okay, well, let's take a look at another one. Let's look at Washington, which is one of the better teams in the league. And the difference there, goals, well, not surprising. We know the Preds have a problem with goals. Shooting percentage, skating distance, and top shot speed are the differences where Washington is better. And I think the skating distance is the one that kind of stood out to me. Shooting percentage, the Preds take a lot of shots. So their shooting percentage is going to be, they're taking a lot of shots and they're not scoring. So of course their shooting percentage is going to be low. Well, okay. I get that. I think, I was watching one of the games the other day, and I was noticing if you're just taking a shot at a goaltender, 99% of the time, an NHL goaltender will stop it if he sees you take the shot. And so what most goals are scored are on deflections or rebounds. And what I didn't see were shots that had the potential of rebounding. Shots directly into the torso are going to get swallowed up into the glove, going to be swallowed up. Shots low, butterfly goaltenders, that's about all there are in the league these days. Low shots have the best chance of rebounding off the pads and providing an opportunity, but then you've got to have somebody down there to collect the rebound and do something with it, right? What my understanding is that the goaltender is only responsible for the first shot. If there's a second shot comes in, then you're kind of relying on your defenseman. Now, I know that's not entirely true, but the goaltender is also responsible for how the puck rebounds. But if it doesn't rebound, then or if they're easily able to clear it, then you kind of lost your opportunity. But the skating distance was interesting. I did notice that Washington spends more time in the defensive zone. And the Preds are one of the better teams in spending more time in the neutral and offensive zone. They are above average in time in the offensive zone. In fact, they spend 10% more time in the offensive zone than the Washington Capitals. They're just not being effective when they're in the zone. And I think it just goes back again, I think, to taking too many shots and the shots not being effective. You shoot the puck a lot, but and I'm not so sure about how they're counting this anyway, because when I was a scorekeeper, if the if the puck is not directed at the net, so if it's going wide and the goaltender catches it, that's not a shot. But I think they do it now because I think there's some stat about dangerous shots, and dangerous shots are shots that are shot at the net. And I'm not exactly sure when the definition changed, but I know when I had to count shots on goal, if it was a shot and the goalkeeper stopped it, but it wasn't going towards the net, that was not a shot. So I'm not exactly sure that the numbers are as accurate as they could be, but regardless, everybody's playing under the same rules. So, the Preds are taking a lot of shots, and it's just not accomplishing anything, or not accomplishing what they need to get accomplished. So which is why the skating distance. They're looking at how much the players are moving around. And Washington's players don't move around as much. The skating distance for them is a lot less than the Preds. So that's one thing that just kind of stood out to me. Top shot speed, I don't know. I guess if the goaltender can't see it, but I don't know that that's really a problem with the Preds. I think they're average in the league when it comes to that, but definitely skating distance is something that stood out, and I might need to do a little bit of research and try to figure out what I can figure out on skating distance. But yeah, so the Preds definitely had better. Looking at NHL Edge, I mean, as far as what zone they're in, they definitely are better than Washington about being in the offensive zone. But yeah, like the skating distance, it'd be nice to see a little bit more of a breakdown on that, but I don't think that's there. Looking at where goals are being scored from, most goals are scored from right in front of the net or in the middle of the ice, in the middle in front of the goaltender, but in the middle, not back on the line. So I guess if you split it into thirds, the ice in thirds going front and back. That center ninth part of the ice is another place where and it kind of makes sense. A lot of goals are deflected or rebounds. So the initial shot comes from somewhere else, and so they're the shot from that position is not really getting credit for anything. But it was interesting from the right point. Washington has 4 goals, which is above average. So from the right point, 4 goals is above average, and Calgary has 6 goals from the left point, and that's also above average. So shots from the right and left point don't tend to go in. So the Washington's got 4, and that's considered high. It's actually not that big of a number. I don't remember. It was a couple seasons ago. The Preds were only scoring from the left point. And it was like whenever they would shoot from the left point, the puck would go in. They'd wind up scoring. And so I was always yelling when they had the puck in the left point to shoot. But as far as the Preds' goal scoring from most positions, Nashville's average in the league on scoring from most of the positions. Just those 2 areas where most of the goals are scored, in front of the goal, and just beyond that in the middle ninth. Look at it as like a tic-tac-toe board, the center square. Those 2 places, the Preds are below average in those 2. But that's where most of the goals are scored, and the Preds aren't scoring goals. So that kind of makes sense. But from everywhere else, they're average in the league. Yeah, I mean, Preds need to score more, and they need to be better in the second period. A good second period leads to a good third period, and it started the season they were better in the second period, terrible in the first. Now they're better in the first, and they just completely suck in the second period again, and I don't know why. And I don't know what to look at. They probably could short shift, maybe take less shots in the second, something like that. Try to hold on to the puck a little bit more, play a little bit better defense. Anyway, so that's the comparison. Momentum. Calgary is on a 2-game losing streak. Oh, to only be on a 2-game losing streak. They are 4-6 of their last 10. Wow, 4 victories. That would be awesome. Tonight is is the second and last game of their road trip. They did lose the game in Dallas the other night. They lost to Dallas, right? Yeah, they lost at Dallas 6-2. 6-2. Wolf was in goal. The Predators have lost 7 in a row. They're 2-8 in the last 10. 3 of those were in overtime. All those losses in overtime were all in a row. Losses 2 through 4 of the 7-game losing streak. All but the first loss had the winning team had 3 goals. In that first loss, it was 5. Since then, 3. And after tonight, the Preds go on the road for 2 more games. Goaltenders, Dustin Wolf, 8-5-1, and he was in goal for the loss on Dallas. And then they've got Dan Vladar, who's 5-5-4. So Vladar and Wolf seem to equally sharing duties, with Wolf playing in Dallas the other night. I'd expect to see Vladar, Dan Vladar in goal. For Nashville, Saros gets most of the work. But my hunches never pay off. It's a good thing I don't like to bet, and maybe that's why I don't like to bet, because when I guess wrong. But I got a feeling Annunen is going to be in goal tonight. Saros played a lot of games in a row, maybe because they were working out this trade with Wedgwood and didn't want him to get injured, which is why I think Wedgwood has played a lot more in Colorado, because they knew that they were going to be trading Georgiev. Noonan played the other night and lost, but who's not losing in the Preds these days? So I don't really think that's necessarily a key. But I think Noonan could get the start tonight and give Saros a little bit more rest before we go on the road. But I'm probably wrong there too. Anyway, so once again, the people to watch for on the Calgary Flames. Number 10, Jonathan Huberdeau, center Jonathan Huberdeau. Number 91, center Nazem Kadri, leader in points and the worst plus minus. So look for things to happen when number 91 is on the ice. And then number 52, Mackenzie Weegar. So those are the 3 players' numbers to look for: 10, 91, and 52. Maybe 91, 10, 52 would be the order to, because I think it seems like more things happen when Kadri is on the ice. They're tied. They're 9 and 8 goals, so neither one of them are lighting it up. But that's kind of how the Preds are. Anyway. There you go. I got a little. I guess I have a little bit of a depressing mood here at Predators Proclivity. Looking at the Preds' potential and just starting to weigh the season, and it would just be more interesting too if they had more wins, and then there would be more data to ponder over. What they could do to win even more. But right now, looks like I still feel like they need to take less shots, but be more effective in their shooting. Maybe stop running around so much like a bunch of kids chasing a soccer ball, something like that. But Hopefully we'll get the win, and then for the next podcast, things can be a little bit more upbeat here on Predators Proclivity. Sorry for the kind of downer mood I'm in, but that's I think that mood probably reflects how most Predator fans are feeling. I've zhuzhed out my studio here. I found all my Predators stuff and I started putting it around. So hopefully that gives a little bit better mojo. Yeah, that's, the Predators definitely care and matter to them what my studio looks like. But definitely got a lot of Predator stuff in here. So there's barely room for me to sit. Anyhow, thanks for listening. I'm Preston Proctor, and you've been listening, begrudgingly or not, to Predators Proclivity. Have a great day, everybody.